In the last few weeks, Capitol correspondent Jason Doyle has previewed the races for a state superintendent and the U.S. Senate, and this week he had a chance to speak with the person who will replace Jim Inhofe in Washington, D.C. That person is either Democrat Kendra Horn or Republican Markwayne Mullin. Jason sat down with both candidates this week, again, for equal time interviews. We begin with former U.S. Congresswoman Kendra Horn.
Congresswoman Horn, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get started and talk a little bit about some of the issues you could be facing if you win the unexpired U.S. Senate seat that is currently held by Senator Inhofe. First of all, inflation continues to go higher and higher. American families are struggling. What should be done to help American families afford that food, fuel, and housing that have just skyrocketed over the last year?
Well, Jason, it's good to be here with you. It's always good to sit down and talk. And I think this is such an important question because I know along with families across the state of Oklahoma, are really feeling the impacts of inflation from when we fill up at the gas tank to going to the grocery store to buying pet food. I mean, it's everywhere. So solutions, energy. That's one of the important things that we have to tackle. First of all, we need a comprehensive energy policy that ensures that we have abundant, affordable domestic energy. Across the board, we need different sources, including oil and gas. Let's talk about American manufacturing. One of the problems with our global economy right now that we saw in the pandemic was we had this break in our supply chains, and we have been overly dependent on China and other places for our supply chains. There was a bipartisan bill that passed, the CHIPS Act, that my opponent voted against, to revitalize high-tech manufacturing. That's creating good paying jobs and helping us secure the supply chain so we're less vulnerable to those things.
Well, you kind of got into my next question. Oklahoma is an energy state. How can you bring your experience as an Oklahoman to help set national energy policy?
Energy policy is so important, and you're right. The fact that I am a fifth-generation Oklahoman, the fact that I understand that Oklahoma is an energy state, and all of the above energy state, we produce 3 times the amount of energy that we consume. We have this incredible depth and breadth of expertise. We are third in the nation in wind production. We are still in the top 5 in oil and gas production, and we have a lot that we can bring to the table. When I served on armed services, working with the DoD, 2 of the top concerns of the Department of Defense, as well as our jobs and economic future, is climate change and affordable, abundant domestic sources of energy. What we've seen with the unnecessary and awful invasion of the Ukraine by Putin and the reliance in Europe of one type of energy and relying on Russia for that energy is we cannot rely on other countries for our energy production. We are fortunate that we have that here. That's why I put out my all-in energy plan. That's an all-of-the-above approach, and we need to be thoughtful and we need to have long-term strategies.
Rural Oklahoma is vital to Oklahoma's economy because obviously the agriculture and the energy development there. So what could Congress do to help make sure that we bolster the economies of rural communities in Oklahoma and throughout our nation?
I grew up in rural Oklahoma. I love rural Oklahoma. My parents still live in the same house I grew up in. So this is a subject that is really near and dear to my heart because rural Oklahoma and rural communities across this country bring so much. Yes, agriculture and our food supply and so many things. But there's also a lot of innovation, a lot of richness and companies that come up in rural Oklahoma. But the opportunities and the strengths of rural Oklahoma and the challenges of rural Oklahoma are different than our urban areas, and that's okay. But what I can do is to be a voice for Oklahoma across the board, and I will do that. I think we need more people speaking up for the needs of rural Oklahoma.
As you know, several social media companies have made the news, and social media and tech companies are getting a lot more scrutiny from Congress because of the misinformation, disinformation that's been making the rounds there. So what should Congress do, if anything, to regulate that industry?
We have to make sure that we are being thoughtful and intentional about the policies that we put forward, whether they're for our infrastructure or healthcare or social media and tech companies. So let's talk about it this way. First Amendment ensures that we have right to free speech and to gather and freedom of religion, all of those things. But there's also things that are in the public interest. So making sure that when we're talking about these kinds of companies and the misinformation and the disinformation, we have to balance the need for freedom of speech with protecting our communities.
Well, let's move on to international affairs. The Russian-Ukraine conflict has been going on for months now. What are the next steps that the U.S. should take in that conflict?
What we're facing with Ukraine is someone who just wants to take over the world, as an authoritarian dictator wannabe that invaded another sovereign nation. And I think it is appropriate that we have taken steps to help support the Ukraine. That doesn't, again, mean everything all the time, but we have to continue to work with our allies in Europe, and we have to find that right balance. But we cannot let dictators or wannabe dictators like Putin or Xi Jinping just do whatever they want without feeling those consequences. It's called accountability.
Well, let's return back here to home and talk a little bit about healthcare, something vital to every American. Right now, families are struggling with prescription drugs, especially Americans with chronic disease. So what should Congress do to step in and help people to afford the drugs that help them just live?
Healthcare is broken in a lot of different ways. So what we need to do is take action to make sure drug companies are held accountable. They can't just charge whatever they want. We also have to have insurance companies being held accountable. When I was in the House, I introduced legislation to cap insulin prices at $35 a month, something that just got passed, something that my opponent opposes. And this is let's be clear, especially for type 1 diabetics, they are born with this condition. This is not lifestyle, these are people that this is just a disease that they were born with and will literally die without insulin.
Congresswoman Kendra Horn, the Democrat candidate for the unexpired term for U.S. Senate, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.